Welcome to the deep dive. Today we're tracking a really sophisticated strand of global crime. It's one that connects, the high-tech streets of Western Europe with the automotive markets of South Asia,
Specifically Nepal.
specifically Nepal. It feels like such an unlikely route for transnational crime, but the sources we've looked at reveal this remarkably efficient pipeline. So our mission today is to get past the sensational headlines. We want to really dissect the mechanics of this criminal network, how they operate, and then understand its real, tangible impact on Nepal's economy.
Right.
This isn't just about stolen cars. It's about a major drain on the country's finances and a huge risk to its financial sector.
And what's so clear from the start is that this whole problem is a massive indicator of, well, systemic vulnerabilities. The criminals aren't winning because they're geniuses. They're winning because they found the perfect environment in Nepal.
A perfect storm.
Exactly. You've got these incredibly high import taxes, big gaps in customs, and this dangerous over-reliance on old paper-based systems that just aren't built for modern fraud.
And that perfect storm creates three core areas of damage we have to explore. First, a massive loss of tax revenue for the state.
Which hurts public services.
Of course. Second, cripplingly unfair competition for legitimate car dealers. And maybe the most important and overlooked risk is the severe instability it creates for Nepal's banks. Okay, so let's unpack this journey. It all starts with high-tech theft in places like the UK, right? Targeting high-value brands.
That's right. Land Rover, BMW, Mercedes-Benz. The usual suspects.
And we're not talking about someone smashing a window and hot wiring a car here. Tell us about the level of sophistication they're using from the very beginning.
It's almost entirely non-contact. The primary method is the keyless relay attack. These syndicates use specialized gear to basically catch the signal from the owner's key fob.
Even if it's inside their house.
Oh yeah, even if it's sitting on the kitchen counter. They amplify that signal, trick the car's computer into thinking the key is right there, and then they just drive it away.
In seconds, with no damage.
In seconds. No broken glass, no alarms, clean.
And that lack of damage must be so important for the next phase, which is identity laundering. A pristine car is going to fetch a much higher price.
Precisely. Once they have the car, the clock is ticking. And the laundering process is, well, it's surgical. First, they'll swap out the physical vehicle identification number plates, the VIN plates.
With ones from a salvaged or crashed car?
Exactly. One with a legitimate history that's now off the road.
Yeah.
But, the physical swap is only half the job these days.
Because of the electronics.
Right. The critical step is reprogramming the car's computer. They use these sophisticated diagnostic tools to get into the ECU, the main computer, and they override everything. The chassis number, the engine number.
Yeah.
They make the car's digital brain match the new fake VIN.
So even a standard police check on the side of the road wouldn't catch it.
It would be incredibly difficult. The electronics would match the plates.
So it has a new identity, both physical and digital. How do they actually get it from, say, a port in Europe all the way to Kathmandu?
With a flawless-looking paper trail. They forge everything. Bills of lading, sales invoices, export certificates. Then the car gets hidden inside a shipping container.
And I'm guessing it's not declared as a luxury car.
Of course not. It's often declared as used machinery or scrap metal, something that won't attract much scrutiny. It just blends into the millions of containers moving around the world.
The logistics are fascinating. But that leads to the big question. With all that risk, all that cost and effort, why Nepal? What makes it the destination of choice?
The answer is 100% about economic policy. The single biggest reason is Nepal's vehicle tax structure. It's punishing.
How punishing are we talking?
The sources are clear on this. When you combine customs duties, excise duties, and VAT, the final legal cost of a car can be pushed to over 250% of its original price.
250%? That's an incredible tariff wall. What's the official reason for a tax that high?
Well, it's twofold. It generates a huge amount of revenue for the state, and it's also a form of protectionism trying to limit imports. But the unintended consequence is that it creates this irresistible profit margin for criminals.
Because their initial asset was free.
Exactly. Their only costs are laundering and shipping. So they can sell a Land Rover at, say, 150% of the base price, drastically undercut the legitimate dealers, and still walk away with astronomical profits.
So the state's own policy inadvertently created the perfect financial motive for organized crime.
It created the demand for a black market. But that motive can only be acted on if the procedural gaps exist.
And those gaps are all about Nepal's internal system.
That's right. The main point of failure that criminals exploit is the country's historic reliance on a fragmented, paper-based registration system. We're talking about the Blue Book.
For our listeners who aren't familiar, can you explain what the Blue Book is and why it's so fragile?
Sure. Think of the Blue Book as a car's passport and birth certificate all rolled into one. But it's printed on regular paper, with just stamps and signatures for security.
So it's easy to forge.
For a sophisticated operation, faking a Blue Book is trivial. So when a bank or a buyer looks at that document, they have no real foolproof way to check if the information on it is legitimate.
And I'm guessing the government departments don't have a way to talk to each other digitally?
That is the critical failure point. There's no centralized, real-time digital database that connects the customs data when the car supposedly entered the country with the Transport Department data when the Blue Book was issued.
And no link to international databases.
And that's the most glaring hole. No mandatory cross-referencing with Interpol's stolen vehicle database.
So a car could be flagged as stolen by every police force in Europe.
And it would be invisible in Nepal. That flag just doesn't exist in their system. The car gets registered, gets its shiny new Blue Book, and is sold as a completely legitimate asset.
That's a huge blow to international credibility. It signals a really weak regulatory environment.
It does, and this leads us directly to the economic consequences. Because this is not a victimless crime, not by a long shot.
Let's start with the government. What's the quantifiable damage here?
The immediate hit is the fiscal drain. Every single one of these smuggled cars represents a complete loss of that 250% tax revenue.
The customs, the excise, the VAT, all of it gone.
All of it. If you're talking thousands of high-value cars a year, that adds up to billions in lost revenue. That's money that should be funding roads, schools, hospitals. It's a massive fiscal leak.
And what about the legitimate car dealers, the ones playing by the rules?
They're put in an impossible position. They pay the full tax burden, all the compliance costs. How can you possibly compete on price against a criminal selling the exact same car for half of what you legally have to charge?
You can't. It strangles the formal sector. It discourages legitimate investment.
It creates a market where breaking the law is way more profitable than following it.
Now, let's get to the banks. You called this an insidious and overlooked risk. How do they get pulled into this?
They get pulled in completely unaware. A bank's due diligence process is built for an older world. When someone applies for a car loan, the bank checks their credit, and then they check the collateral, the car.
And they do that by looking at the Blue Book.
They look at the paper Blue Book. The forgery, being nearly perfect, passes the inspection. The bank, thinking everything is fine, then finances a stolen asset.
And the entire loan is based on collateral that isn't real?
It's based on collateral that could vanish overnight. Because when law enforcement eventually identifies that vehicle as stolen, and could be years later, it gets seized.
And the collateral backing the loan.
It evaporates instantly.
What does that do to the bank's books?
The loan immediately becomes a non-performing loan, an NPL. The borrower, who is often an innocent victim themselves, is now left with no car, but still owes the bank all that money.
So they're very likely to default.
Highly likely. And if you imagine a large-scale crackdown where hundreds or thousands of these cars are seized at once, you could trigger a wave of NPLs that destabilizes the entire lending sector.
It's not just a few bad loans, it's a systemic risk, contagion.
Exactly. It undermines the stability of the financial system. The banks become both victims and unintentionally facilitators for laundering criminal money.
It seems obvious, then, that the solution has to be a complete overhaul, both technologically and procedurally. What are the concrete steps that policymakers need to take, and fast?
The number one priority has to be digital resilience. This means fast-tracking a mandatory, centralized national vehicle registry, a single, secure digital platform to replace the Blue Book entirely.
Something like a blockchain-based system.
Ideally, yes. Something that's virtually impossible to tamper with.
And that registry can't be an island. It has to be connected globally from day one.
Absolutely. Mandate real-time, automated integration with Interpol's stolen vehicle database. Any VIN that comes in and gets a red flag from Interpol has to immediately halt the registration. No questions asked.
Plus, modernizing the tools on the ground.
Yes, getting digital scanners into the transport offices. So you have mandatory multi-point VIN verification, not just someone eyeballing a stamp number on a metal plate.
That sounds like a massive project. It would require huge political will.
It does. It requires total commitment. But as we've laid out, the cost of doing nothing is far, far higher.
Mm.
But the private sector can't just wait around for the government.
They need to be proactive.
They have to be. The NA Automobiles Association, which represents the dealers, should establish a really rigorous code of conduct, a certified importer program.
Proving their supply chain is clean.
Exactly. Auditable proof. It would give them a competitive advantage based on trust. And most critically, the banks have to stop relying on paper. Period.
So they have to completely re-engineer their loan approval process.
Fundamentally. No more taking the blue book at face value.
What's the new standard for due diligence?
It has to be mandatory VIN checks using commercial vehicle history services like a Carfax report before a single rupee of the loan is disbursed.
Right. So, by making financing conditional on a clean digital history, the banks themselves become a choke point.
A very powerful one. They control the money. They control the financial oxygen that this whole black market needs to breathe.
If the criminals can't get their cars financed, the profit motive starts to collapse.
Precisely. The banks can shift from being victims to being the market's most effective de facto regulators.
So this deep dive really shows a clear path forward. It's about transforming Nepal from this vulnerable target into a digitally fortified market by tackling the root causes head on.
And it has to be a partnership. The government has to lead the reforms, the private sector has to enforce new standards, and the public needs to be informed and demand that accountability. That's the only way to restore integrity.
And we'll leave you, our listener, with this final thought to consider. We've seen just how powerful a centralized digital registry can be in fighting this kind of transnational crime. So what are the broader implications for global trade? How many other markets, how many other countries are exposed to similar risks simply because they're still relying on fractured, paper-based systems for the basic functions of governance?